The phone rang at 2:47 a.m., and I knew it was Vanessa before I even looked at the screen. Nobody else called me at this hour with that particular brand of cheerful catastrophe in their voice. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Tommy? Hi, baby. So, funny story. I sat up in bed, already calculating deductibles in my head. After 8 years as a claims adjuster, you develop a sixth sense for disaster. After 3 years married to Vanessa Hargrove, you develop a tolerance for it. Let me guess, I said, rubbing my eyes. You borrowed my car again. Well, yes, and something happened to it. It's really not that bad, Tommy. I mean, the other guy's Mercedes is pretty banged up, but your Camry is still drivable, mostly. I walked to my apartment window and looked down at the parking garage. My assigned spot was empty. Of course it was. Vanessa lived across town in a cramped studio with her roommate Tara, but somehow my car keys always ended up in her purse. Where are you? I asked. St. Mary's Hospital, just for observation. I'm totally fine, but the police want to talk to you about insurance stuff. St. Mary's Hospital. That was a 20-minute drive from her place, in the opposite direction of anywhere she'd claimed she was going tonight. I made a mental note of that, the way I do with all insurance claims. Details matter. I'll be right there, I said. You're the best, Tommy. I love you so much. She hung up before I could respond, which was probably for the best because I wasn't sure what I would have said. I got dressed and called an Uber, since my wife had apparently totaled my transportation. While I waited, I logged into my insurance portal on my phone. My rates had already been climbing thanks to Vanessa's previous accidents, a fender bender in a Target parking lot 6 months ago, and that incident with the fire hydrant in February. But this would be the third claim in a year. I could already see the premium increase notification waiting in my inbox. The Uber driver was chatty, asking about the late-night hospital run. I told him my wife had been in an accident. She okay? He asked. She always is, I said, staring out the window at the empty streets. At the hospital, I found Vanessa in the emergency room, sitting on a bed and flirting with a young paramedic. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup intact. Not exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd just crashed a car hard enough to require hospitalization. Tommy! She jumped up and hugged me, all warmth and perfume. I'm so glad you're here. Officer Reddick was waiting by the nurse's station. I'd dealt with him before on claims. He was thorough and fair, which meant he asked uncomfortable questions. Mr. Hargrove, he said, shaking my hand, your wife says you gave her permission to use your vehicle tonight. I looked at Vanessa, who was suddenly very interested in her phone. Did I? Well, you didn't say I couldn't, she said, not looking up. Mrs. Hargrove, Officer Reddick continued, you told me your husband explicitly said you could borrow his car to visit your sick grandmother. Vanessa's grandmother had been dead for 2 years. I'd paid for half the funeral. There seems to be some confusion about the details, I said carefully. Can you tell me what happened? According to the police report, Vanessa had been driving north on Route 9 at 2:15 a.m. when she rear-ended a Mercedes at a red light. The Mercedes belonged to Dr. Patricia Hoffman, a surgeon who was heading home from the hospital. Dr. Hoffman was understandably upset about her $80,000 car being turned into an accordion by a 2019 Toyota Camry. The other driver wants to press charges, Officer Reddick said quietly. She thinks your wife was intoxicated. I looked at Vanessa, who was now texting someone. Was she? Blood test came back clean, but she was uncooperative during questioning. I could imagine. Vanessa had a talent for turning any situation into someone else's fault. It was almost impressive, in a sociopathic kind of way. What happens now? I asked. That depends on you, Mr. Hargrove. If you confirm she had permission to use the vehicle, this goes through insurance as a normal claim. If not, it became a case of unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, which would make it Vanessa's problem, not mine. I looked at my wife, still texting, still acting like this was all a minor inconvenience. 3 accidents in 12 months, 3 insurance claims, 3 times I'd had to leave work to deal with her mistakes. "Can I have a moment to think about it?" I asked. Officer Reddick nodded. "I'll be at the station until 6. You can call me." After he left, Vanessa finally looked up from her phone. "You're not actually thinking about it, are you? Tommy, come on. We're married. What's yours is mine, right?" "Apparently," I said. "Who are you texting?" "Tara. She's worried about me." I glanced at her phone screen. The contact name was Eli, not Tara. "Let's go home," I said. "Which home?" she asked. "Yours or mine?" It was a good question. Vanessa had never officially moved in with me, despite being married for 3 years. She kept her studio apartment, claiming she needed space to think. But she had keys to my place, access to my car, and apparently the right to make decisions that affected my insurance rates. "Yours," I said. "I'll drop you off." We took another Uber across town to her building, a converted warehouse that smelled like cigarettes and regret. Vanessa chattered the whole way about how unfair it was that she'd been blamed for the accident. I mean, who stops at a red light at 2 a.m? There was nobody around. She could have just gone through it. The Uber driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. I shrugged apologetically. At her building, Vanessa kissed me goodbye, like nothing had happened. "Thanks for coming to get me, baby. You're the best husband ever." "Yeah," I said. "I'm a real catch." I had the Uber take me home, where I sat in my kitchen with a beer and my laptop reading through my insurance policy. The language was clear. Unauthorized use by a household member was not covered, but proving Vanessa didn't have permission would be tricky. We were married. She had keys. I'd never explicitly told her she couldn't use the car, but I'd also never explicitly told her she could. I opened a new browser tab and started researching Massachusetts vehicle laws. Then I opened another tab and looked up divorce attorneys. Just for research purposes, you understand. I didn't call Officer Reddick that morning. Instead, I went to work and pretended everything was normal, which in my line of work meant listening to people lie about how their accidents weren't their fault. "The tree came out of nowhere," Mrs. Patterson insisted, showing me photos of her Subaru wrapped around an oak that had been growing in the same spot for probably 50 years. "Trees are sneaky that way," I agreed, making notes in her file. My cubicle was in the middle of the claims department floor, surrounded by a dozen other adjusters who spent their days translating creative fiction into actuarial reality. Marissa Chen worked 2 desks over, handling property claims. She was also Vanessa's former co-worker and current gossip source. "Heard about the accident," Marissa said during our coffee break. "Vanessa okay?" "She's fine. Car's totaled, though." "That sucks. What's that? Her 3rd one this year?" "You've been counting?" Marissa stirred sugar into her coffee. "Vanessa mentioned it when I saw her last week. She was at Prestige Motors looking at new cars. Said you guys were thinking about upgrading." Prestige Motors was the luxury dealership on Route 9, about half a mile from where Vanessa had rear-ended the Mercedes. Interesting coincidence. "When did you see her there?" I asked. "Tuesday, I think. She was with some guy. Tall, dark hair, really nice suit. Figured it was a salesman." Tuesday was the day Vanessa had told me she was having dinner with her sister. Her sister lived in California. "Did she mention anything about trading in my Camry?" "She said something about how you were ready for something more reliable, that the Camry was giving you guys problems." The Camry had 60,000 miles on it and ran like new. The only problem it had was Vanessa's driving. I went back to my desk and called my insurance company. After 20 minutes on hold, I got through to a customer service representative who sounded like she was reading from a script written by robots. "I need to remove an authorized driver from my policy," I said. "Is this due to a change in household status?" "You could say that." "I'll need to update your information. Is the driver moving to a different address?" She already lives at a different address. She's my wife, but she has her own apartment. There was a pause. Sir, if you're legally married and she has access to your vehicle, she needs to be listed on your policy regardless of where she lives. What if I don't want her to have access to my vehicle? Then you'd need to ensure she doesn't have keys or permission to drive it. I looked at my computer screen, where Mrs. Patterson's claim was still open. The tree that came out of nowhere, the oak that had been growing in the same spot for 50 years, minding its own business until Mrs. Patterson decided to introduce it to her front bumper at 30 miles per hour. Let me call you back, I said. At lunch, I drove to Prestige Motors. It was the kind of place that sold cars to people who thought a Honda Civic was what poor people drove. The showroom was full of German engineering and Italian leather, with price tags that could fund a small college education. I found the service department and asked to speak to a manager about an accident claim. A guy in his 30s came out, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His name tag said, Eli Kramer, sales manager. How can I help you? He asked. My wife was in an accident last night. She mentioned she'd been here looking at cars. I wanted to see if you had any information that might help with the insurance claim. What's your wife's name? Vanessa Hargrove. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe, or guilt. I'm not sure I remember her, he said. We get a lot of customers. Tuesday evening. Dark hair, about 5'6", probably flirting with the sales staff. That doesn't narrow it down much, he said with a laugh that sounded forced. I pulled out my phone and showed him Vanessa's Facebook photo. This ring? Any bells? He looked at the picture a little too long. Oh, right. Vanessa. Yeah, she was looking at the new BMW series. Seemed very interested. Was she alone? I think so. Yeah, she was alone. He was lying. I'd been listening to people lie about insurance claims for 8 years. I knew the tells, the pause before answering, the unnecessary details, the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. Did she mention trading in a Toyota Camry? I asked. She might have. I'd have to check my notes. Please do. He disappeared into the back office for a few minutes, then returned with a folder. Here it is. She was interested in a 2024 BMW 330i, fully loaded, about $55,000. She said she'd need to discuss financing with her husband. Did she fill out any paperwork? Just a preliminary credit application, nothing binding. He handed me a copy. Vanessa had listed her income as $65,000 a year, which was about $20,000 more than she actually made. Under spouse income, she'd written $85,000, which was accurate. Under current vehicle, she'd listed my Camry as having mechanical problems and being unreliable. Can I keep this? I asked. Sure. Are you interested in moving forward with the purchase? Not right now, I said, but I'll definitely be in touch. I drove back to work thinking about timelines. Vanessa had been at the dealership on Tuesday, filling out credit applications for a car we couldn't afford. On Wednesday night, she'd crashed my Camry into a Mercedes half a mile away from the same dealership. Today was Thursday, and she was expecting me to file an insurance claim so she could get money for a down payment on her dream car. It was almost elegant, in a completely sociopathic way. That evening I went to Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar near my apartment where the beer was cheap and the bartender minded his own business. Samir was already there, working on his second pint and complaining about his job in IT. The CEO wants to know why we can't just hack our way into better productivity, Samir said. I tried to explain that's not how computers work, but he kept using air quotes around the word hack, like I was holding out on him. Samir had been my best friend since college. He was the kind of guy who could fix your computer, explain cryptocurrency, and still lose an argument with his mother about whether he was eating enough vegetables. He was also the only person who'd never liked Vanessa. How's married life? He asked. Expensive. I told him about the accident, the dealership, and the credit application. Samir listened without interrupting, which was one of his better qualities. So she's planning to buy a $50,000 car with insurance money from a car she crashed on purpose, he said. I don't think she crashed it on purpose. I think she crashed it because she's a terrible driver, but I think she's been planning to get rid of it for weeks. Same result, though. Same result. Samir finished his beer. What are you going to do? I'm going to call Officer Reddick and tell him Vanessa didn't have permission to use my car. You sure about that? She's your wife, man. This could get messy. It's already messy, I said. I'm just deciding who's going to clean it up. I called Officer Reddick from the parking lot outside Murphy's. He answered on the second ring. I've been thinking about what we discussed, I said, about whether my wife had permission to use my car. And? She didn't. There was a pause. Mr. Hargrove, I have to ask. Are you sure about this? Once I file this report, it becomes a criminal matter. Unauthorized use of a motor vehicle is a misdemeanor. I'm sure. Can you come in tomorrow morning to make a formal statement? I'll be there at 9. After I hung up, I sat in my car for a while, thinking about the last 3 years. The accidents, the lies, the credit applications, the mysterious text messages to someone named Eli. The way Vanessa always seemed surprised when her actions had consequences, like she was genuinely shocked that the world didn't revolve around her convenience. I thought about the BMW she wanted and the husband she expected to pay for it. Then I drove home and changed the locks. Friday morning, I was at the police station at 8:50, sitting across from Officer Reddick with a cup of coffee that tasted like it had been brewed in a boot. The formal statement was surprisingly simple. No, I had not given my wife permission to use my vehicle. No, she did not live at my address. Yes, I wanted to press charges for unauthorized use. This is going to complicate your marriage, Officer Reddick said. My marriage was already complicated. He slid a form across the desk. Sign here and here. We'll issue a warrant for Mrs. Hargrove's arrest. Given that it's a first offense and a misdemeanor, she'll probably be released on her own recognizance. I signed the papers. My handwriting looked steadier than I felt. One more thing, I said. I want to report my car keys as stolen. When did you notice they were missing? This morning. It wasn't technically a lie. I'd noticed that morning that Vanessa still had a set of keys to a car she was no longer authorized to drive. The fact that I'd given them to her 3 years ago seemed like a minor detail. I went to work and tried to focus on other people's disasters. Around 10:30, my phone started buzzing with increasingly frantic text messages from Vanessa. Tommy, the police are here. They say you filed a report? This is crazy. I'm your wife. Call me back right now. I can't believe you're doing this to me. Tommy, please. I'm scared. I turned my phone face down and went back to reviewing a claim about a kitchen fire caused by someone trying to deep fry a frozen turkey. At least that guy admitted his mistake. Around noon, Marissa appeared at my cubicle with a look of barely contained excitement. Office gossip was her favorite hobby, and she'd apparently struck gold. Did you know Vanessa got arrested this morning? She whispered. Did she? Tara called me. She said the police showed up at their apartment with handcuffs and everything. Vanessa's at the station right now. Huh. Tara thinks it's about the accident. Something about unauthorized use of a vehicle? Marissa was fishing for details, her eyes bright with curiosity. Sounds serious? I said, turning back to my computer. Tom, come on. What's going on? Are you guys getting divorced? I'm trying to work, Marissa. She lingered for another minute, clearly hoping for more information, then drifted back to her desk to spread whatever rumors she could construct from my non-answers. At lunch, I drove to a locksmith and had new keys made for my apartment. Then I went to a cell phone store and added a GPS tracker to my account. If Vanessa was going to keep borrowing things without permission, I wanted to know where they ended up. My phone rang as I was driving back to work. Vanessa's number. Tommy, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all day. I was working. They arrested me, Tommy. They put me in handcuffs in front of all the neighbors. How could you do this to me? I didn't do anything to you, Vanessa. You stole my car and crashed it. I didn't steal it. I'm your wife. You took it without permission and lied to the police about having permission. That's theft. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice had changed from panicked to calculating. Okay, I get that you're upset, but this is getting out of hand. Can't we just work this out between us, like adults? How do you suggest we do that? I could pay you back for the insurance deductible, and maybe we could look into getting me added to your policy properly so this doesn't happen again. With what money, Vanessa? You just applied for a $50,000 car loan. Another pause, longer this time. How do you know about that? I know about a lot of things, like how you were at Prestige Motors on Tuesday when you told me you were having dinner with your sister. Tommy, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very creative. Don't be like this. We can fix this. We're married, remember? For better or worse? I remember. Do you remember the part about forsaking all others? What's that supposed to mean? Ask Eli. I hung up and turned my phone off. I had work to do. That evening I went back to Murphy's Tavern. Samir was there again, along with Nina Rodriguez, my upstairs neighbor. Nina was a retired cop who'd moved into the building 6 months ago. She was in her 50s, sharp as a razor, and had the kind of suspicious mind that comes from 30 years of dealing with people at their worst. Heard there was some excitement at your place today, Nina said. Oh? Police car in the parking lot around 10 this morning. Young woman in handcuffs. Looked familiar. Small world. Nina smiled. Your wife's got quite a vocabulary. Could hear her all the way up on the 3rd floor. Samir nearly choked on his beer. She got arrested at your place? Apparently she still thought she lived there, I said. Tried to use her key. Discovered I'd changed the locks. Jesus, Tom, you really went nuclear on this. She stole my car, Samir, after lying about where she was going and filling out loan applications behind my back. What was I supposed to do? Maybe talk to her first? I tried talking to her for 3 years. She wasn't interested in listening. Nina signaled the bartender for another round. What's your next move? I don't have a next move. I filed a police report. The rest is up to the legal system. Bullshit, Nina said. You're planning something. I can see it in your eyes. I've seen that look before, usually right before someone does something they're going to regret. Or something they should have done a long time ago, I said. We drank in comfortable silence for a while. The bar was filling up with the usual Friday night crowd. Construction workers, office drones, and people like us who didn't have anywhere better to be. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Prestige Motors tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. Eli. I showed the message to Samir and Nina. That's either really stupid or really ballsy, Samir said. Both, Nina agreed. You going? Wouldn't miss it. Want backup? I thought about it. Eli Kramer was probably 6 inches taller than me and 20 pounds heavier. He was also sleeping with my wife and trying to sell her a car with money from my insurance claim. On the other hand, I was angrier than I'd ever been in my life, and anger can be a useful motivator. No, I said. This one's personal. Saturday afternoon, I drove to Prestige Motors with a small digital recorder in my pocket and a very specific plan in mind. The dealership was busy with weekend customers, families looking at SUVs and young couples dreaming about sports cars they couldn't afford. I found Eli in his office, a glass-walled cube that overlooked the showroom floor. He was wearing another expensive suit and a nervous expression. Mr. Hargrove, thanks for coming. Call me Tom. We're practically family now. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding. About what? About my relationship with your wife. What relationship would that be, Eli? We're friends, that's all. She came in looking for a car. We talked. She seemed nice. Nothing inappropriate happened. I pulled out my phone and opened the GPS tracking app I'd installed. Interesting. Because according to this, my wife's phone spent about 4 hours at your apartment on Wednesday night. That's after she crashed my car, but before the police arrived. Eli's face went pale. How do you? I'm an insurance investigator, Eli. I investigate things. It's literally my job. Look, I don't want any trouble. Too late for that. I leaned back in my chair and looked around his office. Family photos on the desk, a diploma from some business school, a motivational poster about success being a journey, not a destination. Nice place you've got here, I said. How long have you been working in car sales? 5 years. Make good money? I do okay. Good enough to afford a $50,000 girlfriend? It's not like that. What's it like then? Eli loosened his tie. Vanessa said you guys were separated, getting divorced. She said you were just roommates at this point. Did she mention that she was using my car to drive to your apartment? Or that she was planning to buy a BMW with my insurance money? She said the car was hers. The car she crashed into Dr. Hoffman's Mercedes at 2 a.m, half a mile from here, after spending the evening at your place. I didn't know about the accident until the next day. But you knew she was married. Eli didn't answer. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to stop seeing my wife. You're going to cancel that credit application, and you're going to stay away from both of us. Or what? I smiled. Or I'm going to have a conversation with your boss about how you're using company resources to facilitate insurance fraud. That's not what happened. Isn't it? You helped a married woman apply for a car loan using false information about her income and her current vehicle. Then she conveniently crashed that vehicle and tried to use the insurance payout as a down payment. What would you call that? Eli stared at me for a long moment. You're bluffing. Am I? I stood up and walked to his office door, which opened onto the showroom floor. Eli's boss was visible through the glass, talking to a customer near the BMW display. Should we ask him? I said. Wait. Eli's voice was tight. What do you want? I want you to disappear from my life. Completely. No more phone calls, no more text messages, no more late-night visits. As far as my wife is concerned, you don't exist. And if I do that, then this stays between us. Eli nodded slowly. Okay, fine. It's over. Smart choice. I walked back to his desk and picked up the credit application Vanessa had filled out. I'll be taking this. You can't? Sure I can. It's got my financial information on it. Identity theft is a serious crime, Eli. Almost as serious as insurance fraud. I folded the papers and put them in my jacket pocket, then headed for the door. Tom, Eli called after me. I turned back. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of this. No, you're not, I said. But you will be. I drove home feeling better than I had in months. The GPS tracker on Vanessa's phone showed she was at her apartment, probably wondering why her boyfriend had suddenly stopped returning her calls. By Monday, she'd figure it out. By Tuesday, she'd be furious. I was looking forward to Tuesday. Monday morning brought a call from Officer Reddick. Vanessa had been formally charged with unauthorized use of a motor vehicle and was scheduled for arraignment on Thursday. The district attorney's office was treating it as a standard case. First offense, misdemeanor, probably a fine and probation. She's got a lawyer now, Officer Reddick said. Public defender. He's already called asking if you'd be willing to drop the charges in exchange for restitution. What kind of restitution? Payment for your insurance deductible, plus any increase in your premiums. How much are we talking about? According to your insurance company, about $3,000 total. I thought about the BMW credit application in my desk drawer and the 4 hours Vanessa's phone had spent at Eli's apartment. I'll consider it, I said. Take your time, but the offer won't stay on the table forever. At work, Marissa was practically vibrating with curiosity. She'd clearly been waiting all weekend to continue our conversation about Vanessa's arrest. So, she said, appearing at my cubicle with coffee and a predatory smile. How was your weekend? Quiet. Really? Because Tara said Vanessa was trying to reach you all weekend. Something about her boyfriend not returning her calls? I looked up from my computer. Her boyfriend? The guy from the car dealership. Eli something. Apparently they've been seeing each other for a few weeks now. Huh. Tara thinks Vanessa's going to leave you for him. Says he's got money, drives a nice car, treats her like a princess. Good for her. Marissa looked disappointed by my lack of drama. You don't seem very upset about this. Should I be? Most husbands would be. Most husbands don't marry women who steal their cars. That got her attention. She stole your car? According to the police report. Oh my God, Tom. I had no idea it was that serious. I thought it was just a regular accident. Nope. Turns out there's a difference between borrowing and stealing. Who knew? Marissa hurried back to her desk, probably to call Tara with this new information. Within an hour, half the office would know that Vanessa Hargrove was facing criminal charges for car theft. By lunch, the story would have evolved into something involving drugs, money laundering, and possibly the Russian mob. Office gossip was like a game of telephone played by people with overactive imaginations and too much time on their hands. Around noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Tom, this is Patricia Hoffman. We met at the hospital Friday night. Dr. Hoffman, the Mercedes owner. Of course. How can I help you? I wanted to talk to you about your wife's case. I understand she's been charged with unauthorized use of your vehicle. That's right. I've been thinking about this all weekend. If she didn't have permission to drive your car, then my insurance company shouldn't have to pay for her mistake. I'm not sure I follow. My insurance covered the damage to my car because I was told this was a standard accident between two insured drivers. But if your wife was essentially driving a stolen vehicle, then this becomes a criminal matter. My insurance company could go after her personally for the full cost of repairs. I hadn't thought about that angle. How much are we talking about? $43,000, plus rental car fees, lost wages, and pain and suffering. Probably $60,000 total. $60,000. That was more money than Vanessa made in a year. What do you need from me? I asked. Just confirmation that she didn't have permission. My insurance company will handle the rest. You'll have it. After Dr. Hoffman hung up, I sat at my desk thinking about compound consequences. Vanessa had stolen my car to visit her boyfriend. The boyfriend had helped her apply for a car loan using fraudulent information. She'd crashed the car and expected me to pay for her mistake. Now she was facing criminal charges, a civil lawsuit, and the loss of both her husband and her boyfriend. It was like watching dominoes fall, if dominoes could file for bankruptcy. Tuesday brought a visit from Vanessa's parents. I was in the middle of reviewing a claim about a house fire caused by a gender reveal party gone wrong when Marissa appeared at my cubicle looking nervous. Tom, there are some people here to see you. They say they're Vanessa's parents. I looked toward the reception area and saw Frank and Linda Morales, Vanessa's parents, talking to our receptionist. Frank was a retired construction worker who'd never liked me. Linda was a substitute teacher who'd never met a problem she couldn't solve by talking it to death. Tell them I'll be right there, I said. I found them in the small conference room we used for client meetings. Frank was wearing a suit that looked like it had been purchased for funerals and court dates. Linda was clutching her purse like it contained the family jewels. Tom, Linda said, standing up to hug me. Thank you for seeing us. Of course. What can I do for you? Frank got straight to the point. You can drop these ridiculous charges against our daughter. Frank, Linda said, we talked about this. No, Linda, I'm tired of being polite about this. Frank turned back to me. Vanessa made a mistake. She's sorry. But pressing charges against your own wife? That's just vindictive. She stole my car, I said. She borrowed your car. You're married. That's what married people do. Married people also don't lie about where they're going or fill out fraudulent loan applications or cheat on their spouses. Linda's face went pale. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and showed them the GPS tracking data from Wednesday night. 4 hours at Eli Kramer's apartment, from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Your daughter has been having an affair, I said. She was coming back from her boyfriend's place when she crashed my car. Frank stared at the phone screen. This doesn't prove anything. It proves she lied about where she was going, just like she lied about having permission to use my car. Linda was crying now, quiet tears that she wiped away with a tissue from her purse. Tommy, please. She's our only daughter. If she goes to jail... She's not going to jail. It's a misdemeanor. She'll get probation and a fine. But her job, Linda said. If she has a criminal record, they might fire her. That's not my problem. Frank stood up abruptly. You son of a bitch. 3 years she's been married to you and this is how you treat her? 3 years she's been married to me and this is how she treats me. You're going to regret this, Tom. Family is everything. When you're old and alone, you'll remember this conversation. I'll take that chance. They left without saying goodbye. Through the conference room window, I watched them walk to their car, Frank's arm around Linda's shoulders. They looked like people who'd just learned their daughter wasn't who they thought she was. I felt bad for them, but not bad enough to change my mind. Wednesday evening, I was at Murphy's Tavern with Samir and Nina when my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Tommy, we need to talk. Face to face. I'm coming to your apartment. I showed the message to Nina, who shook her head. Don't do it, she said. Not alone. She's desperate now, and desperate people do stupid things. She can't get into the building, I said. I changed the locks, remember? She could wait in the parking garage, catch you when you come home. Samir nodded. Nina's right. This feels like an ambush. What do you suggest? Public place, Nina said. Somewhere with witnesses and security cameras. The coffee shop next to your building, Samir suggested. Open late, always busy, good lighting. I texted back. Meet me at Starbucks on Main Street. 1 hour. Why not your apartment? Because you don't live there anymore. Tommy, please, I just want to talk. Starbucks or nothing. Fine, 1 hour. The Starbucks was busy with the usual evening crowd. Students with laptops, couples on dates, people killing time before movies. I got a table near the window and waited. Vanessa arrived 20 minutes late, which was early for her. She looked tired and stressed, her usual perfect makeup replaced by dark circles under her eyes. Hi, she said, sitting down across from me. Hi. You look good. Thanks. She'd brought coffee, something complicated with whipped cream and caramel. I stuck with black coffee, which seemed appropriate for the occasion. I talked to a lawyer, she said. Good for you. He says you could drop the charges if you wanted to. Just call the prosecutor and tell them it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Vanessa. Okay, fine. It was a mistake. I made a mistake. Can't we move past this? Which mistake? Stealing my car, lying about where you were going, cheating on me, or trying to commit insurance fraud? I wasn't trying to commit insurance fraud. No? Then what was the BMW loan application about? She stirred her coffee, not meeting my eyes. I wanted us to have a nicer car. Us? You and me. I thought if we had something nicer, something more reliable, you might be happier. With a car we can't afford, bought with insurance money from a car you crashed while visiting your boyfriend? He's not my boyfriend. What is he then? A friend. You spend a lot of time at your friend's apartment, 4 hours last Wednesday night. How do you know that? I pulled out my phone and showed her the GPS tracking app. I've been keeping track of where my property ends up. You're tracking my phone? I'm tracking my phone, the one on my family plan, paid for with my money. Vanessa stared at the screen, watching the little dot that represented her location move around the city like a lost satellite. You're sick, she said. I'm thorough. This is stalking, Tom. I could have you arrested for this. Go ahead. While you're at the police station, you can ask Officer Reddick how your case is going. She slumped back in her chair. What do you want from me? Nothing. There has to be something. Money? I can pay you back for the insurance deductible. With what money? I'll get a second job. I'll figure it out. What about Eli? Maybe he can help. Eli and I, that's over. Really? Since when? Since Saturday. He said it was too complicated, that he didn't want to get involved in our problems. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. So let me get this straight, I said. You stole my car to visit your boyfriend, crashed it into a Mercedes, lied to the police about having permission, tried to use the insurance money to buy a new car, and now the boyfriend won't return your calls because things got too complicated? When you put it like that, it sounds worse than it was. How was it, Vanessa? She was crying now, tears mixing with her coffee. I was lonely, okay? You work all the time, you never want to go out, you never want to do anything fun. I felt like I was married to a stranger. So you decided to find someone else. I didn't plan it. It just happened. Things don't just happen, Vanessa. People make choices. I made a mistake. Can't you forgive me? I looked at her across the table, this woman I'd been married to for 3 years, and tried to remember why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. She'd been fun then, spontaneous, full of life. But somewhere along the way, spontaneous had become reckless, and full of life had become full of drama. No, I said. I can't. Tommy, please, don't call me Tommy. Don't call me at all. I stood up and walked toward the door. Behind me, I could hear Vanessa crying harder, the kind of public breakdown that makes everyone in the room uncomfortable. I didn't look back. Thursday morning was arraignment day. I didn't go to court. There was no reason for me to be there. But Officer Reddick called me afterward with an update. Your wife pled not guilty, he said. Trial's set for next month. How did she seem? Confident. Her lawyer thinks he can get the charges reduced to a civil matter. What does that mean? Means if she pays restitution and does community service, the criminal charges go away. And if she doesn't, then we go to trial and she risks a conviction on her record. I thought about Dr. Hoffman's $60,000 lawsuit and Vanessa's suddenly ex-boyfriend and the job she might lose if she had a criminal record. What kind of restitution are we talking about? I asked. Same as before, $3,000 for your deductible and premium increase. I'll think about it. But I'd already made up my mind. That afternoon, I called Dr. Hoffman's insurance company and confirmed that Vanessa hadn't had permission to drive my car. I also sent them copies of the police report, the GPS tracking data, and the credit application from Prestige Motors. This is very helpful, the claims adjuster said. We'll be pursuing full recovery from Ms. Morales. How does that work? We'll file a civil lawsuit for the full cost of repairs plus additional damages. If she can't pay, we'll garnish her wages. For how long? However long it takes. Could be years. After I hung up, I sat at my desk thinking about mathematical inevitability. Vanessa made about $40,000 a year. After taxes and basic living expenses, she might have $500 a month in disposable income. At that rate, it would take her 10 years to pay off Dr. Hoffman's lawsuit. 10 years of wage garnishment. 10 years of living paycheck to paycheck. 10 years of consequences for one night of bad decisions. It seemed appropriate. Friday brought another visit from Marissa, who was practically glowing with excitement. Did you hear about Vanessa? She asked. What about her? She got fired. I looked up from my computer. When? Yesterday, right after her court appearance. Tara said they called her into HR and told her the company couldn't have employees with pending criminal charges. That seems premature. She hasn't been convicted of anything. Doesn't matter. It's an at-will employment state. They can fire her for any reason. Or no reason at all, I thought. But I didn't say it out loud. What's she going to do? I asked. Tara thinks she'll move back in with her parents, at least until the legal stuff gets sorted out. Moving back in with her parents. At 29 years old, after losing her job, her husband, her boyfriend, and possibly her freedom. It was like watching a controlled demolition, if controlled demolitions could file for bankruptcy. That weekend, I decided to clean out Vanessa's things from my apartment. She'd never officially moved in, but 3 years of marriage had left traces everywhere. Clothes in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom, books and DVDs mixed in with mine. I packed everything into boxes and loaded them into my car. Then I drove across town to her parents' house, where Frank and Linda had lived for 30 years, in a modest ranch that probably hadn't changed much since the 1980s. Frank answered the door. He looked older than he had on Tuesday, worn down by a week of bad news. "Tom," he said, "what do you want?" "I brought Vanessa's things." I carried the boxes up to the front porch and set them down. Frank watched without helping. "She's not here," he said. "Where is she?" "Looking for a job. Turns out having a criminal record makes that difficult." "She doesn't have a criminal record yet." "Doesn't matter. Background checks show pending charges." Linda appeared behind him, looking as tired as her husband. "Tommy, please. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? She's learned her lesson." "Has she?" "She's lost everything. Her job, her marriage, her future. Isn't that punishment enough?" I thought about the 4 hours at Eli's apartment, and the BMW loan application, and the way she'd laughed when she called to tell me about the accident. "No," I said. "It isn't." I drove home and spent the rest of the weekend reading, watching movies, and enjoying the silence. No drama, no crises, no phone calls at 2 in the morning. It was the most peaceful weekend I'd had in years. Monday brought a call from Vanessa's lawyer, a public defender named Mitchell, who sounded like he was handling 50 cases at once. "Mr. Hargrove, I'm calling about the restitution offer. Are you willing to accept $3,000 in exchange for dropping the charges?" "Where's she going to get $3,000? She doesn't have a job." "She's willing to set up a payment plan. $500 a month for 6 months. What happens if she misses a payment?" "Then the original charges are reinstated." I thought about it. $500 a month was probably half of Vanessa's remaining disposable income, assuming she found a new job. Combined with the wage garnishment from Dr. Hoffman's lawsuit, she'd be living on ramen noodles and hope. "I'll consider it," I said. "I need an answer by Wednesday. The prosecutor won't keep the offer open indefinitely." Wednesday came and went. I didn't call Mitchell back. Thursday, I got a text from Vanessa. "Tommy, please, I'm begging you, I'll do anything." I deleted it without responding. Friday, Officer Reddick called with news. "Your wife's lawyer withdrew the restitution offer," he said. "Looks like we're going to trial." "When?" 3 weeks. You'll need to testify." "About what?" "Whether you gave her permission to use your car, whether she had keys, whether she'd done this before." She had done this before. The other accidents? All of them. She never asked permission, just took the keys and left. That's good for our case, shows a pattern of behavior. After Officer Reddick hung up, I sat at my desk, thinking about patterns. Vanessa's pattern of taking what she wanted without asking. My pattern of enabling her by not setting boundaries. The pattern of consequences that had finally caught up with both of us. Some patterns, once broken, can't be repaired. The trial was scheduled for a Thursday morning in October. I took the day off work and arrived at the courthouse early, wearing my best suit and carrying a folder full of evidence. GPS tracking data, insurance records, photos from Prestige Motors, and a timeline I'd constructed showing Vanessa's movements on the night of the accident. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with maybe 20 seats for spectators. Vanessa sat at the defendant's table with Mitchell, her public defender. She was wearing a conservative dress I'd never seen before, probably borrowed from her mother. She looked nervous and young, like a college student facing academic probation. She didn't look at me when I walked in. The prosecutor was a woman in her 40s named Sarah Chen, who handled most of the county's misdemeanor cases. She'd called me the week before to go over my testimony, and she seemed confident about the case. Unauthorized use of a motor vehicle is pretty straightforward, she'd said. Either she had permission or she didn't. Either she lived at your address or she didn't. The jury will figure it out pretty quickly. The judge was an older man named Harrison, who looked like he'd been handling these kinds of cases since before I was born. He called the court to order at 9:30 sharp. People versus Vanessa Morales, he said. How does the defendant plead? Not guilty, Your Honor, Mitchell said. The prosecutor gave her opening statement first, laying out the basic facts. Vanessa had taken my car without permission, crashed it into Dr. Hoffman's Mercedes, and lied to police about having authorization to drive it. The evidence would show a pattern of unauthorized use, financial motive, and deliberate deception. Mitchell's opening was more creative. He argued that Vanessa was a loving wife who'd made an innocent mistake. Married couples share resources, including vehicles. The fact that she lived at a different address was irrelevant. Lots of couples maintain separate residences for financial or practical reasons. This was a civil matter, not a criminal one. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mitchell said, this is a case about a marriage in crisis, not a car theft. Thomas Hargrove is using the criminal justice system to punish his wife for personal problems that should be resolved in divorce court, not here. It was a good argument. I could see some of the jurors nodding. The prosecutor called me as her first witness. I walked to the witness stand feeling like I was about to take a final exam I'd been studying for all my life. Mr. Hargrove, Sarah Chen said, on the night of October 15th, did you give your wife permission to use your vehicle? No, I did not. Did she live at your address? No, she maintained her own apartment across town. Had she taken your car without permission before? Yes, multiple times. Can you give us an example? I told them about the Target parking lot incident 6 months earlier. Vanessa had taken my car to go shopping, crashed into a light pole, and called me from the scene expecting me to handle the insurance claim. Did you give her permission that time? The prosecutor asked. No, I found out about it when she called to tell me about the accident. What did you do? I filed an insurance claim and paid the deductible. Did you discuss this pattern of unauthorized use with your wife? Multiple times. She always said she was sorry and promised it wouldn't happen again. But it did happen again. Obviously. Mitchell cross-examined me for 20 minutes, trying to poke holes in my story. He focused on the fact that Vanessa had keys to my car and my apartment, suggesting that this implied permission to use both. Mr. Hargrove, he said, when you gave your wife keys to your car, what did you tell her? That they were for emergencies. What kind of emergencies? If her car broke down, if she needed to get to the hospital, that sort of thing. Did you ever define what constituted an emergency? I thought it was obvious. So you never explicitly told her she couldn't use your car for other purposes? I told her multiple times to ask before borrowing it. But you never said she couldn't use it? I said she needed to ask permission. That's not the same thing, is it? I could see where he was going. No, it's not the same thing. So it's possible that your wife genuinely believed she had permission to use your car, even if she forgot to ask on this particular occasion? It's possible, I said. But it's not what happened. The prosecutor called Officer Reddick next. He testified about the accident scene, Vanessa's initial statement, and the discrepancies that had led to the investigation. The defendant told me her husband had explicitly given her permission to use the vehicle to visit her sick grandmother, Officer Reddick said. When I spoke to Mr. Hargrove, he said he'd never given such permission and that the defendant's grandmother had been deceased for 2 years. What was your conclusion? The prosecutor asked. That the defendant had lied about having permission in order to avoid responsibility for unauthorized use. Mitchell tried to rehabilitate Vanessa's credibility by suggesting she'd been confused and traumatized by the accident. People say things they don't mean when they're in shock. The lie about her grandmother was just a mistake, not evidence of criminal intent. It was a reasonable argument, but I could tell the jury wasn't buying it. The prosecutor's final witness was Dr. Hoffman, who testified about the impact of the accident on her life and work. She'd missed 3 days of surgery while her car was being repaired. She'd had to rent a vehicle at her own expense. She'd suffered neck pain that required physical therapy. "Have you recovered the costs of this accident from insurance?" the prosecutor asked. "My insurance company paid for the initial repairs," Dr. Hoffman said, "but they're now pursuing recovery from the defendant personally since the vehicle was being used without authorization." "How much are they seeking?" "Approximately $60,000. I heard Vanessa gasp from the defendant's table. Mitchell whispered something in her ear, probably telling her not to react. Mitchell called only one witness, Vanessa herself. She took the stand wearing the borrowed dress and an expression of wounded innocence. Mitchell walked her through her version of events, which painted her as a confused and frightened wife who'd made an honest mistake. "Mrs. Morales," Mitchell said, "did you believe you had permission to use your husband's car on the night of the accident?" "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because I'd used it before, and he'd never told me I couldn't. We're married. I thought what was his was mine." "Where were you going that night?" "To visit a friend. I was having problems in my marriage and I needed someone to talk to." "Did you intend to steal your husband's car?" "Of course not. I would never steal anything from anyone, especially not from my husband." The prosecutor's cross-examination was devastating. "Mrs. Morales," Sarah Chen said, "you testified that you were going to visit a friend. What was this friend's name?" "Eli Kramer." "What kind of friend was Mr. Kramer?" Vanessa hesitated. "Just a friend." "Were you having a romantic relationship with Mr. Kramer?" "No." "Mrs. Morales, I'm going to show you some evidence that's been entered into the record." The prosecutor pulled out a printout of the GPS tracking data, showing Vanessa's phone at Eli's apartment for 4 hours. "According to this data, you spent from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. at Mr. Kramer's residence. Is that correct?" I don't know. Maybe." "Were you having a sexual relationship with Mr. Kramer?" "I plead the fifth." "Mrs. Morales, this isn't a criminal trial against you for adultery. I'm asking about your credibility as a witness." Mitchell objected, but the judge overruled him. "Were you having a sexual relationship with Mr. Kramer?" the prosecutor repeated. "Yes," Vanessa said quietly. "So when you testified that he was just a friend, you were lying?" "I was trying to protect my privacy. Just like you lied to Officer Reddick about visiting your sick grandmother?" "That was different." "How was it different?" "I was confused. I'd just been in an accident." "Mrs. Morales, I'm going to show you another piece of evidence." The prosecutor produced the BMW credit application from Prestige Motors. "Did you fill out this loan application?" "Yes." "When?" "A few days before the accident." "Were you planning to use insurance money from your husband's car as a down payment for this BMW?" "No." "Then where were you planning to get $55,000 for a car?" I hoped my husband and I could get a loan together." "Did you discuss this with your husband?" "Not exactly." "So you filled out a loan application for a car you couldn't afford using income information that was inflated without discussing it with your husband?" "I was going to talk to him about it." "When?" "After I got approved for the loan." The prosecutor paused, letting that answer hang in the air. "Mrs. Morales, isn't it true that you took your husband's car without permission, drove it to your boyfriend's apartment, and then crashed it on the way home, expecting your husband to pay for your mistake so you could use the insurance money to buy a new car?" "No, that's not..." "Isn't it true that you lied to the police about having permission because you knew you'd committed a crime?" "I didn't commit any crime." "Isn't it true that you're lying now? Just like you lied to Officer Reddick and just like you lied to your husband? Objection! Mitchell shouted. Sustained, the judge said. The jury will disregard that last question. But it was too late. The damage was done. Closing arguments were brief. The prosecutor summarized the evidence: unauthorized use, false statements to police, financial motive, and a pattern of deceptive behavior. Mitchell argued that this was a civil matter between spouses, not a criminal case. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. We find the defendant guilty of unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, the foreman said. Vanessa started crying. Mitchell put his hand on her shoulder. Judge Harrison scheduled sentencing for the following week. Vanessa would likely get probation and a fine, but she'd have a criminal record for the rest of her life. As the courtroom emptied, Vanessa approached me near the back row of seats. "Are you happy now?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm not happy, but I'm satisfied. This is going to ruin my life." "You ruined your own life, Vanessa. I just documented it." She stared at me for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. "I loved you," she said. "No, you didn't. You loved what I could do for you. There's a difference." I walked out of the courthouse and drove back to work, where I spent the rest of the day reviewing other people's insurance claims and thinking about the mathematics of consequence. A week later, Vanessa was sentenced to 6 months probation and a $500 fine. Dr. Hoffman's insurance company won their civil lawsuit and began garnishing her wages. She found a job as a waitress at a chain restaurant, making about half what she'd earned before. I filed for divorce the following Monday. It was finalized 6 months later. I kept the apartment, the car, and the insurance policy. Vanessa kept the debt, the criminal record, and the consequences of every choice she'd made. Some things, once broken, can't be repaired. I learned that lesson the hard way, but I learned it completely.